Well, I guess we're muted because the sound didn't go off. Welcome into another episode of Betting the Pitch. I'm your host, the real _ G Warner. This is number 194. I think we'll get to 200 by the end of the season. So thank you, of course, for all the support, for sticking around. If you're on Patreon, I really appreciate that. I feel like you're getting good value for what's available. If you're on pregame supporting me there, I appreciate that too. If you're on YouTube, please hit the subscribe button. If you're on Apple Podcasts or Spotify, please leave a 5-star review. And I think that's all the begging I can do so far. We've got a big show in our hands. I'm going to try to put all of them together: Europa League, Europa Conference League, and most importantly, Champions League, just so everyone is aware of what's going on this whole week. We got a lot to talk about, put it that way. And now that I have Do Not Disturb on like a true professional, gonna also talk about, we'll come up with an ultimate best bet by the time the show ends. Gonna go through two advanced numbers, can get pretty in-depth in these matches because there's only so few going on midweek. If there's other matches in the other leagues that I need to pay attention to, please hit me in the comments, tweet me, the real _ G Warner. Hit me on Patreon, the real _ G Warner, on Instagram, the real _ G Warner, anywhere where that dumb handle I use. Unfortunately, it's stuck, so that's what we got. But let me know, because there's probably some matches I think they're making up in other leagues. At least I heard rumors of that. But we're focused on this episode on the big competition, and that is Europe. So now that is covered, let's figure out what I need to get into, and then we'll get started. All lines quoted in this podcast are courtesy of betonline.ag, my favorite place to get my bets down early. Reduced usage offered on almost every game you want to bet right up until game time. Please follow the link found in the podcast description to fund your account. Use the promo code GW50 to receive a 50% match bonus up to $1,000. Also, highly recommend checking out, especially if you're a Patreon customer, especially if you're a pregame customer, which I will have a promo code later in the episode. But if you are a Patreon subscriber, you're getting a lot. You're getting everything that I'm offering: lines, locked in plays right immediately when they happen, write-ups early, on time, and also in your hands before I even decide I'm going to make a play. So if you like it a little more than I do, you might be able to play it yourself. Highly recommend it. It's a much more affordable rate. And eventually, still promising to do this, I will get a Patreon Discord set up so that we can all talk together. So it's not just relying on everyone commenting on my posts. Because that's really what I was hoping for, is to get everyone really plugged into certain teams, so that if you know your team well, you give us, the rest of the community, a tip. We all use it, win some money, and then our lives are that much easier. So there we go. Now we've got extra money at Bet Online. We might as well get into all this sort of stuff. So let's get into it. Why don't we? I'll start in Champions League, and the first match we have is Manchester City on the road visiting Real Madrid. So big matchup. We saw Man City in a very dominant position in last year's Champions League, choke one up to Real Madrid, I think, then lost in extra time. And Real Madrid went on to somehow surprise Liverpool as well to win the whole thing. I don't really see that happening again this year, but no one really saw that happening last year. I did play Real Madrid in the final. I just felt like they were getting too much of a price on a neutral from Liverpool. But this Real Madrid team is not that special to me. They had the Copa del Rey this weekend, while Manchester City had Premier League stuff trying to win that title. So I don't know that there's one benefit from one to the other. I guess Real Madrid played a little bit later, but maybe that, to me, that doesn't really mean too much, later at night at least. And played in Sevilla, which is a little bit warmer than anything in England at this point, of course. But we'll just get right into it. The number is currently Real Madrid getting a quarter of a goal at home with an over-under of 2 3/4, slightly juiced to the over. Manchester City has a little bit more juice on the side. As anyone who listens to this podcast, you probably guessed my interest in this one, and that is the home underdog, Real Madrid, and the under 2 3/4. Now, I have not had a ton of success betting Real Madrid as an underdog. I don't have it in front of me, but it just feels that way. I feel like I've done really well betting against Man City, despite them being the best team in the world for years. But I'm a little bit hesitant to want to try to take that risk. I will make an ultimate best bet based on a best bet from Champions League, the Europa League, and Europa Conference League, but stick around, we'll get there. I'll also go through two advanced numbers. Currently, Real Madrid, a plus 240 underdog, despite the first leg at home, which I feel like there's some advantage. If they win that first leg, certainly that number drops significantly. If they win by a lot, it might even move to a favorite. Manchester City, if they win on the road, that number will climb significantly as well. A draw, I feel like Man City probably gets a little bit more respect in the second leg, but ultimately Real Madrid, I think it's a good risk if you think they're going to advance to play it here. And then hope for a good result. And then maybe you get to buy back in on Manchester City on the other side if you don't feel as strongly about it in the past. Or if you're looking just for an arbitrage type of situation, I think you take Real Madrid here and then see what happens. Hopefully they get a 1-0 win and you come back on City as not an underdog, but probably something a lot smaller than minus 290 to say the least. 290 to win 100. But anyway, for this matchup, so Real Madrid, they're going to, I think, play a very conservative style of football. They're going to sit behind the ball. They're going to counterattack, which is exactly how they want to play, which a lot of these big clubs, they want the ball and they have the ball the whole time. Real Madrid are certainly used to that in La Liga and really throughout a lot of the Champions League so far. But I think they're really designed to play in a counterattacking style. That's the way Ancelotti wants to do it. I think it works really well with Vinny Jr. and now Rodrigo, who stepped up and has been playing really well. Manchester City certainly are going to give you counterattacking opportunities because they are in possession of the ball more than almost anyone in Europe. Now, what they do to try to counter that and to really stop the counterattack, speaking of, is they foul the shit out of you. Excuse my French. It's late. It's almost midnight. Of course, I never sleep anymore, but the light's at the end of the tunnel. It's coming soon. Manchester City, their strategy is a tactical foul every time there's a counterattack going the other way. They can only do it so many times, and there are players that deserve red cards, second yellows that they don't seem to get. Bernardo Silva specifically comes to mind in the Red Bull Leipzig match, which then he ended up, I think, scoring the go-ahead goal, or at least the goal that covered the spread. I would expect that in a match with Real Madrid, there's probably not the favoritism that you'll see from a lot of these big clubs. Manchester City, being the best in the world, usually gets a lot of calls too, which makes them even more difficult to beat. Real Madrid get plenty of calls themselves. They will not have La Liga refs in this matchup, though, which is a big problem for them because there definitely is some protectionism to me for the big clubs. I get that they're also putting their opponent under a lot of pressure and there are a lot of fouls that occur, but I just don't think they're fair, specifically in La Liga. But ultimately, a lot of the big clubs, they all seem to get the benefit of the doubt more than I think they should. As for this matchup, so benefit of the doubt out the window, should probably be an Italian ref or someone unrelated. And that might change a little bit how physical this match will be, but Real Madrid have not looked anywhere near as good as Manchester City. Manchester City is probably the form team in Europe, winning everything they play, on their way to an FA Cup final and also on their way to stealing the Premier League, despite being pretty big, having a pretty big deficit for a while. Still have a game in hand. I think they're a point behind Arsenal last time I checked, but ultimately they're still going to get through and I think eventually win this thing because there's not really a lot of good teams in England right now. And Arsenal are just really were not able to hold up the momentum and under the pressure. With that said, we're talking about this match with the Champions League. This is the area that Manchester City want to win more than anything. They haven't won it yet. Premier League championships and trophies are just old hat at this point, but they've really struggled to do it. So can they do it this year? Of course, it's the best team, but they also have some bad memories, skeletons in the closet, especially against this Real Madrid team that you really just can't kill. From my humble standpoint, I'm interested in Real Madrid getting that quarter of a goal. I think I like that more than under 2 3/4, just because I think there could be goals in this matchup as Manchester City are going to put pressure on you the whole time. Erling Haaland has scored, I think, 60 goals this season. So there's a lot of goals potential, especially with Karim Benzema on the pitch. The offense for Real Madrid has been very, very different when he's not there, but unless he got hurt this weekend, which this number would be gigantically much more difficult or higher for Man City on the road, probably. Both of these teams should be playing every person they can, assuming if there's any sort of fitness, if you can give 60 minutes, 45 minutes, you're probably playing and starting to try to get off to a good start. I think it's going to be a really tight match. Manchester City, the way I described it earlier, they're going to possess the ball. Real Madrid is going to sit back in their own half and try to run at blazing speeds with Vinny Jr. or Rodrigo or Valverde, who's more of a outside the box scorer, and trying to beat Man City and get them in transition, have a cutback to Karim Benzema, who will finish anything. He's like the hungriest striker in the world. If something is on the kitchen table, he will eat it. I think that's going to cause some problems for Manchester City. I do think they're the better side. I don't think this line is shady by any means that, whoa, Manchester City, wrong team favorite. I'm not saying that. They probably should be favored here. But I'm pretty interested in Real Madrid getting that quarter of a goal, just in case, put it out there. I expected Real Madrid to be pretty juiced as a home underdog. They are not at the moment. I would think that there'd be probably an even amount of money. Seems like the English markets bet a lot more on sports. I mean, they have a lot more money at seeming. The pound's pretty strong. Betting culture there, I think, way more than in Spain. So I would expect potentially more money to come in on Manchester City. So as always, I will wait on Real Madrid getting that quarter of a goal and see where this moves. The two advanced numbers is a little bit more difficult because Real Madrid is such a big underdog at plus 240. That's the way I'd lean, though. And be nice to take a position, have them have a good result, and then be able to come back on Manchester City and arbitrage the rest of the way. Now we'll move to Wednesday. AC Milan hosting Inter, big Derby de Milan, or Milano Derby. I don't know the actual name. I probably should. Anyway, Milan currently a quarter goal underdog at home with all the juice, minus 130 at Bet Online. So this is pretty much a pick 'em right now with Inter Milan favored. It's in a shared stadium, but I think the crowd and the tickets should be skewed toward AC Milan. I think in these European competitions, there's a little bit more of a visitor ticket giveaway or the ticket support. I know in cup matches in the leagues, they give a lot more road seats away than they do for regular home matches or regular domestic league matches. But I also know that tickets in this derby in the semifinals of the Champions League are supposedly nuts. All the hotel rooms crazy. The tickets are a little bit more expensive for the next leg when Inter's the home team, but you'd expect that when it's a decisive one. Most of the time, first legs play really conservatively. I don't necessarily think that this does it any differently. I do think from watching this weekend, though, I'm a little bit worried about the health of Rafael Leao, who's, I think, the most important player for AC Milan, who left after 11 minutes against Lazio this weekend. Milan didn't play great during the week. Inter Milan played really well. And luckily, they're playing each other because Serie A decided just to wait and finally play midweek matches right before Champions League. Probably didn't expect to have two teams, especially not playing each other, but two teams this far, considering how poorly they did last year. But it was not a brilliant move by schedule makers. And fortunately, they play each other. So it might not be as big of a deal. But if there are some injuries, we've seen Leao get hurt. I mean, that's a big problem for them because they want the best team to go forward because they need the money. With that said, I'm interested in AC Milan getting a quarter of a goal at home, just as I was with Real Madrid. That shouldn't surprise anyone if you listen to this podcast, which I know you all do. Thank you again for the support. When I look at the total, I lean to under 2.25, but it's very juiced right now, full minus 120. All the juice at Bet Online right now is on the home team getting that quarter and also the under. I think Inter Milan have essentially been favored against Milan for I feel like ever since COVID. Milan was a surprise Scudetto champion last year and winning the domestic league a lot because Inter Milan faltered in some situations where they could have taken the lead. That's certainly a problem. And this match will mean a ton. This match will mean a ton. I'll say that a million times. It is going to be very physical. I think it's going to be, there's good red card risk here, which unfortunately I found will kill whoever's team gets a red card and certainly damage the potential for an under, especially if there are two red cards, because 10 men versus 10 men to me is like an NHL here in the US or North America, where hockey, if you're playing 4-on-4, there's way too much ice to defend. I would say there's already way too much ice to defend in soccer, way too much pitch to defend. But I also feel like these matches have played very, very close. I don't think that, so Inter Milan have been playing a lot better lately. I like betting against them, and I feel like most of the time when I lose, it's a pretty like dominant win for Inter Milan. I don't really see that happening here. And Inter, they do have some really bad runs that they go on. They've been playing really well lately, though, so it doesn't really fit the bill right here. Lautaro Martinez has been really hot. And Milan, they have, I think part of why they won the Scudetto last season is because they have a defense that pushes forward, presses you, turns the ball over, and then starts quick counterattacks. I think they're going to be in that type of situation here, though they're at home, which is a little, I mean, whatever the home could say, the crowd should favor AC Milan, which does make the quarter goal underdog in that air quotes, if you're listening, home environment. That does make it seem like that shouldn't be that way. But Inter have been favored for a while. This is literally their home stadium. So since it's shared, so it's really not that much of a home environment. But I do think having more of the crowd there is going to matter. We'll see how many Inter Milan fan tickets they can get and steal. I'm sure that's going to be a big tug of war. literally until this match kicks off, and secondary markets and ticket brokers and all those sort of things that I don't know. I don't think they really do StubHub as well over there as they do here in the US. It's definitely not as efficient. I know a friend was in Italy last week and tried to get a ticket for the Roma Milan match, and they laughed at him at the concierge. So it's you know, it's a little bit different. I think it's, you try to get as many tickets as you can. I feel like if you're an AC Milan fan and you're selling to an Inter fan, people are going to hate you, but ultimately money is money. So maybe that's the decision maker. But I think just based on what it should be, is Milan should have more fans there. That makes them, as a home underdog, seem a little bit surprising to me, or a little bit off, which is probably why they're juiced this way. I wouldn't be surprised if this match is closing a pick'em with Inter Milan a slight favorite. I think I'm much less interested in AC Milan at a pick'em because they don't win if you draw, but I'm interested in them overall. I do want to see Rafael Leao in the lineup, because if he's not there, that does impact their scoring ability quite a bit. I do think Inter Milan under Simone Inzaghi, they've not been as much of a counterattacking team under Antonio Conte, because I don't know who can be. But I think it's still the style they want to play, and it might not really work as perfectly as they were hoping for. So we'll see what happens with this one. I do think that from my perspective, I haven't changed my tune, that I still feel like Inter are not really as strong. Maybe it's from really poor European performances. They certainly do smash teams from time to time. But like I said, I don't think that's very likely here. I think the total at 2.25, looking like it might fall to 2. I feel like it'd be too low for such a popular and very heavily bet match like you would see in Champions League. I don't think we're seeing NFL Sunday type of action here, but I do think that there's going to be a lot of bets on this one. I think most public bettors like to bet the over. So there might be some value on the under. You might see a little bit better number than you getting here. But pretty much I like unders in the home dog so far. The 2 advanced number, I'll get to that now before I move to the Europa League. And AC Milan currently a plus 130 underdog to advance. So $100 will win you 130. Inter Milan 2 to 3 basically. So $150 will win you 100 minus 150. And I feel like Inter Milan, you know, if they get a draw here in that first leg, that probably satisfies that minus 150 number. It probably gets bigger for the second round, though honestly wouldn't be a huge type of home crowd situation, I don't expect. Though I guess you could say the same sort of thing for Milan as the quote unquote home team for this one, is that plus 130 doesn't mean too much different, because it's ultimately whoever does well in this one, to me, it's really neutral field, which is why AC Milan getting that quarter of a goal seems a little bit too much to me. With that said, for my ultimate best bet, I'm going to go with AC Milan getting that quarter of a goal. I feel like there's a lot of value there just because they're probably going to have more fans in the crowd. And I feel like this is a really tough matchup. Everyone knows each other really well. I don't think that there's a true upset win in whoever wins this matchup. And I think that also points to the underdog pretty significantly. Now I'll move to the Europa League. These are Thursday matches. Juventus hosts Sevilla. Currently Juve a 3/4 goal favorite right now, with all the juice on Sevilla on the road. Over under is 2.25, juice to the over. Juve has been playing pretty well. They got their 15 points back. The penalty that was given to them was rescinded essentially, and probably will take effect next year. We'll see if it ever even sticks. Teflon Dons in Torino. Sevilla, on the other hand, have been fighting relegation. They've been playing a lot better in La Liga. They got the week off because of the Copa del Rey. They did play a bunch of matches, like 4 matches in 2 midweeks, essentially, just so they could play the Copa del Rey unopposed, which to me is ridiculous, and a lot of people were complaining about it. But c'est la vie. Juve, they want to take a lead and then sit on the ball and kill the game. I don't know that's gone perfectly for them lately, but they've still, I think, been a pretty profitable under team. Sevilla want to play offense, and they've gone only more aggressive offensive-minded managers ever since they're now in their 3rd manager of the season. Jose Luis Mendilibar does not at all consider a defensive style. He plays with his center backs or his defenders as high up the pitch as possible. Sevilla don't have great defenders. I wouldn't be surprised if they play 3 of them just to try to get an extra man out there. And they're probably going to Juve, trying to be as competitive as possible. And really, after what they did to Manchester United, just stealing a draw and then winning a pretty dominant performance at home, I think they're trying to play the same way, same blueprint. From what I had earlier in the week or early whenever this line had come out with the announcement of the matchup, Sevilla had moved up from a half a goal underdog now to this 3/4 number. I don't think we're going to see a +1, but I'm certainly looking out for it if it did happen. I think for my biggest interest in, I do think Sevilla can be competitive, but I don't think I want to have much to do with it until I see a +1, which I don't think we'll get. For the over under at 2.25, juice to the over. I'm very interested in seeing this one hit 2.5. I don't know that Sevilla are a great defense to really support an under, but I think Juve, they really want. I mean, it doesn't really make a lot of sense in the home leg to try to sit on a match and win 1-0, especially you give up a goal late like they did to Inter Milan in the Coppa Italia, and then they go out basically. It's really not a great setup, but Allegri's not a leper doesn't change his spots, or a cheetah doesn't change his spots. So Massimiliano Allegri will certainly not do it because until he's fired for a second time or sacked for a second time from Juventus. In terms of a 2 advanced number, currently Juve -145 favorites via +125. It seems a little cheap to me on Juve, though it's certainly not a small price. I don't think Sevilla will get twice lucky and come back from the dead with 2 own goals to get a draw on the road in a really tough place to play. So this is really going to be how well do Sevilla start? I think they have a lot of problems. I don't think that they score efficiently enough considering the defensive risks that they're going to take. So I like Juve. I don't know that I really love the under as much, but if I got to pick something in this matchup, I'm going to go under 2.25. Next, we'll go to Roma hosting Bayer Leverkusen. Currently, Roma a quarter goal favorite with all the juice right now. Over under is 2.5 or 2.25. Juice to the under. That's a really low total for Bayer Leverkusen. Certainly, we got the defensive side in Roma, and we got the the offensive all-out attack side in Leverkusen. Leverkusen have played really well in the Bundesliga, but the Bundesliga has not really performed well at this stage ever since Bayern won the Champions League, I think, in the COVID season. Roma haven't really been in this type of situation for a while. They've been kind of struggling, but Mourinho came in, took an offensive side that was really all offense under Paulo Fonseca and has made them very good defensively, plus brought in Paulo Dybala to kind of rescue them late with goals. He's been pretty banged up, hasn't really been playing a ton, kind of been a super sub. I don't expect him to really be in this matchup because they're going to need a ton of legs to I guess, run with Bayer Leverkusen. Roma, I think, are going to play more defensively because it's impossible to play more offensively than Leverkusen do. Leverkusen have great speed on the wings. They have a great creator in the middle in Florian Wirtz, who's eventually going to leave the Bundesliga, but still is under contract and is playing in this one. Xabi Alonso, who had been all over Europe, he's done a great job to kind of restore and revitalize a Leverkusen team that got off to a really awful start. But I don't really love their setup because they're going to go try to win this matchup. So getting a quarter of a goal, I feel like doesn't really matter if you get a quarter or a half. Certainly a road draw, you'd want to win a full bet on, but I think Leverkusen have a good shot to win this one. But I also feel like they're going to leave themselves exposed. Their defense is not on a level to stop a Roma side. And it kind of seemed to me that Roma's lineup this weekend, despite playing Inter, if I'm not mistaken, they rested Tammy Abraham. I think he's their better scorer, though they've been doing a ton of rotation. And Mourinho finally has a lot of guys he wants to play. So I think that puts Roma in a better position. Now for the 2 advanced number, Roma is an underdog here, +105 at Bet Online. And that surprised me, especially because they start off at home. I feel like a good result there would swing this line significantly, especially because it's basically pick 'em. But I don't trust the Leverkusen defense whatsoever. I don't trust German defenses whatsoever, especially not in Europe. And I don't think that they're going to really go outscore some team. Maybe they get a goal and win 1-0, but I feel like that's a very unlikely scoreline if Leverkusen were going to win. So Bayern 04 are a team I'd like to be against. So I'm very interested in Roma getting that +105 to advance. I also think, unfortunately, I don't know that I like the under 2.25 because I just don't think that's something I want to do with a Leverkusen team involved. I don't really hate the idea of taking that quarter of a goal and it might hit a half before this kicks off. I expect it probably will because I think Serie A gets a lot more respect in the marketplace, at least in the European marketplace, than does the Bundesliga. So I guess I like Leverkusen getting a quarter of a goal, but I like Roma the most to advance. And I'm trying to think of for an ultimate best bet. I mean, it probably should be something I should grade. I don't know because it's hard to say because if I play Roma +105 as my best bet from the Europa League, I don't really have a feel for the Sevilla match as much. I mean, it'd still be out there hanging out for the next. I think I'll probably do that one just because I feel like at home so many things could go well. And I feel like even at home, they should probably win that match. And that will put them in a really good position for you to have a good trading atmosphere or trading vehicle to potentially hedge and get a better price if you wanted to just play around with Roma at home in the first leg and then sell it off for a Leverkusen play if it's still reasonably close. Or you got a really good bet on your hand, or potentially Leverkusen goes and pulls off a huge upset, and you still got a shot at getting odds for Roma to turn something around. So for my ultimate best bet and the selection for the Europa League, I'm going to go with Roma to advance plus 105. Anything really that's even money or better, I think will fit that bill. And last but not least, I'll probably spend the least time on this league before we get to the ultimate best bet. But for the Europa Conference League, I got Fiorentina hosting Basel, Swiss club versus an Italian. Fiorentina minus 1.5. All the juice on Basel right now on the road. Over under is 3. Juice the under pretty heavily. I'm most interested, I think, in under in this one. I think Basel, it's pretty obvious what a Swiss side will do. I mean, Fiorentina are not the giant Serie A club. I mean, they are compared to Basel, but they haven't really been that great. I do like getting that full 3 as a push mechanism if you play under there. So I like under 3 in the Basel match. To advance number, Fiorentina minus 260 to move along, Basel plus 205. I just don't know. Basel's got some good pedigree. Certainly Urs Fischer, the great manager from Union Berlin in Germany, he left Basel for that job, but it's hard to say what their team looks like, and I have not followed them because I don't really watch the Swiss league. I don't know where to do that in the United States of America. Last, we'll go to West Ham hosting AZ Alkmaar. So we've got a English Premier League side against a Eredivisie, a Holland or Dutch side. West Ham currently a 1-goal favorite with a little bit more of the juice right now on AZ Alkmaar. Over under is 2.5. Juice the under. And I always lean unders with West Ham. I don't really believe that they're a goal scoring team. I don't know that AZ, is probably the way that I should refer to them. If they're really going to challenge West Ham offensively too much, I think West Ham, they're still a side that wants to counterattack you. They're still pretty close to relegation zone in England. So that's certainly a concern, though. I think they've been drawing on the momentum of the Europa Conference League to try to get them going more on a tougher situation. And certainly there's some class relief when they face an Eredivisie side who's not the most famous in this competition. They certainly want to win it, and we'll see how that goes. 2 advanced numbers currently West Ham 1-2, so minus 200. AZ Alkmaar plus 160 to move through. So the more likely upset in this conference league is AZ Alkmaar to move through. Probably makes sense from Eredivisie side versus a Swiss Super League. But I think in terms of, my best bet for the West Ham AZ Alkmaar match, I think I like that under 2.5 is probably my biggest interest. And then I still have not really believed too much in the Fiorentina offense. It certainly had some days where I look really silly playing it under with them. But I feel like Basel are going to go in there and try to hold on for dear life and try to keep it as close as possible on the road. So I'll give you Basel under 3 as my best bet in the Europa Conference League. And that brings us to the end of our show, but I got a lot of bills to take care of or business to take care of before we get there. Ultimate best bet will come through. If you're on YouTube, please hit subscribe. If you're on Apple Podcasts or Spotify, please leave a 5-star review. I got a promo code coming up for you on pregame. If you're looking to get in to my picks that come out overnight, 20% off will be coming there shortly. And also going to mention my Patreon before we get all the way there. For this week, use the promo code CLEAN20, clean like a clean sheet. Get 20% off for all listeners of Soccer Podcast. Good for 7 days from the podcast release. So you have until May 16th. Use it for any of the picks on pregame.com. We've got plenty of great handicappers out there, whether you're looking for some help with some NBA picks in the playoffs, some UFC, my college basketball co-host, AJ Hoffman's all over that. Of course, my baseball podcast co-host, Scott Seidenberg. I'm throwing out baseball stuff out there. But check out pregame. There's plenty. Use the promo code CLEAN20, get 20% off. No bad idea. Never a bad idea to save some money. But also check out my Patreon, patreon.com/the_G Warner, coming out with everything consolidated in the same place, separate posts. So in case you want one more than another, you don't have to look through a ton of things. But ultimately got a good community there. Going to try to get a Discord going if I ever have time, because usually I try to use that time to sleep. But it's going to be a good way to get through and see everything that comes out. I try to get everything out there, my write-ups ahead of time, as you see that before it comes out on Twitter, of course. And also you get to see what I'm thinking about, what I'm potentially going to play, leans that don't make my card, but still win anyway. You might want to get in on those. So check me out, @thereal_G Warner on Patreon, patreon.com, @thereal_G Warner. And here we are for the ultimate best bet. I got to turn on the Instagram camera because, I'm just trying to really be on every sort of platform as possible, even though everyone asks me, how many Instagrams do you have now? But anyway, here we go. So welcome in. I don't hit the button, right? Welcome into Betting the Pitch number 184 with your host, @thereal_G Warner on Twitter and here on Instagram. And for my best bets for the European competitions this week, I'll go with AC Milan getting a quarter of a goal in Champions League, Roma +105 to advance, and FC Basel under 3 in the Europa Conference League. For my best bet, I'm going to go with AC Milan getting a quarter of a goal. It's kind of a weird situation, a shared situation, but they should have more of the crowd against their Inter Milan, literally rival. Big derby match. I'm expecting Rafael Leao to try to give it a go, especially with 5 substitutions. It's probably more likely they try him out there, and if it doesn't work, they take him out. But they also got a good situation where they're going to play a really tight game. I think I think Inter Milan see this as a good opportunity to get a point, and they're going to be favored. So you get paid if that happens. I also think there's a good chance that AC Milan pull off an upset. So take AC Milan plus a quarter of a goal as my ultimate best bet for Betting the Pitch, episode number 194. And that'll do it for this episode. Thanks for hanging out with me super late, especially if you're live. We'll be coming and check out the Patreon, patreon.com/TheRealG Warner. @thereal_G Warner. Wow, that's late. But I promise you, we got plenty of subscribers already. Join the fun, join the clean team, join the club, join the clean. Use the promo code clean20 at pregame. But just get on there. I'm sure there's a lot that you want to see. Baseball's starting to heat up. We're starting to turn things around. Let's get it going. See you guys on there soon, and have a great evening. Of course, sleep well because it's time to go to bed.